No more Belal Muhammad as champion. Thank God. Thank Jack Della Maddalena too for taking this guy out and purging the welterweight division of its most boring champion of all time, the most cringe person probably on the entire UFC roster. I'm so glad Belal has finally lost. It wasn't a long title reign. Never defended his belt, so I don't know why he's still claiming that he's one of the greatest welterweights of all time. But anyways, we'll talk about that fight in a second. As always, I want to break down every single fight from UFC 315. The whole card was actually fairly decent. Like I said in my prediction video, you can't predict a fight card until it happens. The main event was relatively a fun fight. The co-main event, not the greatest, but it was at least better than the Grasso-Shevchenko fight that we saw in the Sphere. So I can't wait to break all this stuff down for you guys today. As always, I'll go through the early prelims, the prelims, and then the main card. If you guys want to jump around, there will be timestamps down below in the description. If you guys like this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, share with your friends to help boost this channel and the algorithm. With that all out of the way, let's break down the fights. So the fights kicked off with an absolute bang. We started out with an early prelim fight at bantamweight between Beksak Amakan and Brad Katona. Beksak getting the first round knockout, an absolutely beautiful shot to end that one very, very quickly. Very exciting way to start out the early prelims. Then we had Daniel Santos versus Lee Jeong-yong. This was a pretty fun fight. It was close. I honestly think that you probably could have called it either way. The strikes were basically dead even throughout the whole fight. What I think won Santos this fight were the takedowns that he mixed in. So when you have a close striking fight like that, sometimes the thing that pushes the fight over the edge is just mixing in takedowns. Even if you don't do a ton with them, you always got to be switching the game up. And we'll see how that played against Belal in the main event when we get to that. But our early prelim headliner was between Marc-Andre Barriault and Bruno Silva. And going into this one, I doubted Marc-Andre. I thought he was a little bit old. You know, he had a couple rocky fights in his last few, and I didn't know that he was going to get this one done, and in such a devastating fashion in the first round. That was awesome to see, for him to perform like that in front of his home crowd there in his home province of Quebec. That was so special to see. It was a terrifying knockout, to be honest. It was one of those bop and bash knockouts where he knocked him out cleanly with an elbow, hit him with another elbow on the way down, and then as he fell to the ground, he hit him with like 4 or 5 follow-up shots. So it didn't look good for Silva. He was out for a while, and he ended up having to get stretchered out of the arena. I hope he's okay. He's a former, I think, M1 kickboxing champion. He's got like 20 knockouts. He's a very exciting fighter. However, when you take a knockout like that, it could really devastate your career. It can mess up your equilibrium and screw up your timing. It can also affect your confidence in ways. So I would not be betting on Bruno Silva in his next fight, but I hope he bounces back because that was a devastating knockout. It kind of took a little bit of the life out of the room because everybody wanted to celebrate Marc-Andre's win, and he's sitting there like, damn, is this guy okay? Like, he's still out. He's still face down, but he eventually got out of there on the stretcher. He was moving his limbs, so that's good. And yeah, hell of a way to conclude the early prelims. Let's move on to the regular prelims. Kicking off the regular prelims, we had the light heavyweight bout between Navajo Sterling and Ivan Ersland, and this was a very fun kickboxing fight. It was back and forth. I think Navajo was just a little bit more crafty. He was mixing things up. He's so elusive with his kicks. There's really not too much of a read to them, and he's constantly throwing different things out there, mixing up combos, throwing kickboxing combinations. So that's really what won him the fight, was just his volume and his creativity, whereas, you know, Ivan was just kind of looking for the one-shot KO, and even though he has a lot of knockouts, he has a lot of power, it's going to be hard to find that on a tall, lengthy, elite kickboxer like Sterling is. So I can't wait to see what he does next. I was kind of hoping for this fight to end in knockout or be a little bit more exciting, but it was still a really fun, technical kickboxing match. I want Sterling to come out in his next fight and hopefully get a finish, but yeah, very exciting to see what he will do next in the UFC. Next up, we had another light heavyweight bout between Modestas Bukauskas and Ion Cutelaba. Bunch of weird names there, but this fight, I think the judges got this one horribly wrong, if I'm being honest, because Ion had more than double the strikes throughout the fight. I thought he clearly won the first 2 rounds. I thought the third round, yeah, you could probably give it to Bukauskas, but I think Ion got robbed in this one. And there's been a couple fights like that where I feel like Ion, you know, probably should have gotten the nod. Maybe it's the way he fights. Maybe it's because he eats so many shots. But I don't know. I feel like the judges got this one horribly wrong. You guys can let me know down below in the comments, but this was like the worst decision of the entire night. I really don't agree with that one. So I took Eon to win that one, and yeah, obviously got that one wrong. So moving on, we had a bout between Jessica Andrade and Jasmine Judoviscus at flyweight. So going into this one, I was saying, Andrade's pretty tested. She's a veteran. She's knocked people out. She's got a lot of power. Like, I wouldn't be overlooking her this quickly. Jasmine's an up-and-coming star, but she's more of a ground fighter. She's elite on the ground, don't get me wrong, but her striking, it's not top 5. I think the women in the top 5 of flyweight right now are much better strikers than Jasmine. So we'll see. I'm cheering for her. Trust me, as a Canadian, I would love to see her win the belt. I would love to see another Canadian champion, but as impressed as I was with this performance, I'm just wondering, what is she going to be able to do against the Grassos, against the Silvas, against the Barbers and Blanchfields of the division? Is she going to be able to take down Barber and Blanchfield, 2 very, very good wrestlers? And what is she going to be able to do against Shevchenko? I know Shevchenko's getting up there in age, but we saw with her performance last night that she's still quite the fighter. So we'll see. I'm still a little bit skeptical, but it was an incredible performance. I don't want to take anything away from it because she went in there and she took Andrade out early. She got her with a submission in the first round, which is very impressive. So I hope she does big things at flyweight, but that flyweight division, especially with the fights that happened last night, it's looking like a pretty exciting women's division. So let's move on to the headliner of the prelims. In the prelim headliner, we had a welterweight bout between Canada's own Mike Malott and Charles Radke, and this one was very, very fun. Right from the get-go, the first round was action-packed, back and forth, both guys landing good strikes. Second round starts up, and we get Dean Thomas coming on the mic, giving a little bit of coaching advice to Mike Malott. Now, as he's laying the coaching advice out, Mike Malott is in the process of knocking Radke out cold. So that was kind of funny to watch, but yeah, I love Mike Malott. He raises the Canadian flag there at the end, and he's such an awesome Canadian fighter. I love cheering for him. You could just tell that guy exudes Canadian pride, and it's a little bit tough to have right now, especially if you were voting conservative in this recent Canadian election like I was. I'm a little bit upset with the outcome. So I love seeing that Canadian pride repped there by Mike Malott and getting that knockout in the second round. It was absolutely awesome. Let's move on to the main card. Kicking off our main card, we had a lightweight bout between Benoit Saint-Denis and the late replacement Kyle Prepolek. Now, this was a Canadian fighter who came into the UFC, lost both of his fights in the UFC, and has since been kind of doing some work on the regional scene, and he was coming off of 3 knockouts. Obviously, he's a Canadian fighter, a local boy, so they put him in there against Benoit. You can just see in this fight, you could just see clearly that there are levels to this game. You can be a professional fighter, you could do great work on the amateur scene, but the UFC is just a different level of competition. When you get there, you have to be on, and you have to have confidence to pull off your game plan. And I know Kyle was talking like, man, I'm going to upset people. Like, I'm really going to get this done. But you could feel it. You could feel it when he's talking. Like, this guy doesn't really believe in himself the same way that Benoit does. And Benoit, he's a legitimate killer. I mean, he was in the Special Forces for 5 years, and he's still like only 28 or 29 years old. He went basically, I think, straight out of school at like 18 or 19 years old into the Special Forces, came immediately out of that and went straight into fighting. So this guy exudes violence, and despite exuding violence, he was actually pretty nice to the guy in the first round. He was just looking to submit him. And I know the crowd was booing, but he was trying to be nice. Like Benoit, and he was explaining to him after the fight. I was kind of reading the lips there, but he was explaining to the guy that like he was just trying to submit him because he knew like he could do a lot of damage to Kyle if he wanted to. So in the first round, he's just kind of looking for the back, slowly progressing the position. He gets the back. He gets very close to ending the fight in the last couple seconds of the first round, getting that rear naked choke, but Kyle survives. And then in the second round, Benoit is like, well, the fans are booing a little bit. They don't really like this fight. I didn't get the submission in the first round. This isn't going clean. I'm going to have to turn it up a little bit. So then he started to really hurt Kyle. And Kyle found some shots. because Benoit Saint Denis' boxing is not great. He throws great hands, okay? He throws great hands, but sometimes his head stays on the center line, which is why I say that his boxing isn't great. It's the same reason why in my prediction video, I said Jack Della Maddalena has amazing boxing, like superb boxing. His punches are phenomenal, but his boxing isn't perfect. I don't think it's like on Ilia Toporia's level, because Jack, and we'll get to this in a second, also leaves his head on the center line a little bit. He doesn't move perfectly. And boxing's not just how you punch, it's also how you move and how you defend and how you react to punches. So that's why Benoit got tagged a little bit. But for the most part, Benoit was just beating Kyle up until he finally found the choke and conceded the submission there in the second round. But he was, I mean, when Benoit gets going, man, the way he rips body shots, he was landing elbows in the clinch viciously. I'm surprised Kyle didn't get knocked out by any of those. He was landing body knees. Like, Benoit, this is why I get so excited about him and why it really sucks that he lost to Poirier and Moicano, because those were two speed bumps along the road where it was looking like he was going to become the next champ. When you look at Benoit's skill set, just his skill set, and you take away that, what I was saying before, that he kind of gets hit sometimes. That's why Poirier knocked him out. When you take away kind of some of the minor flaws in his game, he actually has one of the most complete games in the entire sport. He has amazing wrestling. He has submission offense. He can submit guys. He can submit you with a darce or a rear naked choke or literally anything. He has the kickboxing. He throws brutal body kicks. He's got the knees. He's got the clinch game. He's got elbows. He's got fairly decent boxing, like I said, when it comes to the punches and throwing the hands. Benoit Saint Denis has the complete skill set to beat Islam Makhachev. I just don't know if he will, because, like I said, he throws caution to the wind sometimes. And, I think with this new coach now that he has a legit coach in his corner, I hope he gets things put together and he becomes the fighter that he truly can be. Because in a couple years, Benoit Saint Denis truly could be one of the pound for pound best fighters on the planet. He has that potential when you watch him fight. He just needs to put it all together, and he needs to, move that head off the center line when you're throwing punches. Don't just stand there and watch what you're doing. So, anyways, fantastic fight by him. Moving on, we had the women's flyweight bout between Alexa Grasso and Natalia Silva. Going into this fight, I underestimated Silva, which I will never do again. But I thought, Grasso coming off of some very close fights with Shevchenko, she doesn't have a ton of losses on her record. She has very good boxing. She has power. She has grit. She's a coach. She has a mind and an IQ for the game. There's so many things to love about Grasso, but when you saw that fight open up, you could tell that Grasso only had the boxing. Natalia had everything. She had the kickboxing. She had the takedown defense. Everything was going right for Silva, and Silva put on a masterclass. She has one of the highest IQs in the sport, and seriously, even compared to the men, the way she was feinting throughout that fight made it look like she was dancing. Her hips were always turning. Everything was moving. The shoulders were moving. It was a feinting masterclass. If you want to learn how to feint in MMA, just watch the Grasso-Silva fight over and over and over again, and you will learn so much about feinting. Now, I know a lot of men can't adopt all of those techniques, especially heavier set older men. Like if you're a 35-year-old middleweight, it's going to be hard to flash those hips the entire fight and not gas yourself out. Natalia is a 28-year-old little girl. So, she has a lot of energy to get that movement going. But I think some flyweights, some bantamweight fighters could take from this fight the feinting masterclass that Silva put on. That's really why she beat Grasso. Grasso couldn't come in. She couldn't find any entry because the feints were always there. And the feints, she wasn't just feinting to feint. She was feinting and then throwing stuff with in the motion of the feint. It was phenomenal. I can't remember the last time I saw a feinting masterclass like that. Maybe something Izzy did back in the day, maybe against Paulo or something. I don't know. But that was such a phenomenal performance. And Grasso, she was turning it up, finding some shots in the second, finding some shots in the third. She was really trying to cut the cage down and pressure her. And she fought like a champion. She really showed some heart there in trying to find her shots. But Silva was just too good. She's too good. She's too quick. She's got elite timing. She's got the kickboxing. Like I said, she's got the boxing. She can throw spinning kicks. She has everything. And she is the scariest fighter at flyweight right now. almost say that Silva's a scarier fight than Wei Li for Shevchenko. Like, the speed and the IQ that I saw in that fight against Grasso really blew me away. That was the most intelligent performance that I saw the entire night. And it was from a woman, which you don't always expect. You know, some people think like, well, the women's fighters aren't as good as the male fighters. I don't buy that at all, because what we saw from Silva and what we saw from Shevchenko, like, Belal didn't fight that smart. Not even close. So, yeah, it was a fantastic performance. I was so impressed by that. And going back and looking at Silva's record, looking like she hasn't lost in the last 8 years, like, I really shouldn't have underestimated her. Her only losses came when she was like 19 or 20 years old. So you can almost scrub them under the under the rug. So, yeah, I can't wait to see what she does next. I think she's going to challenge for the belt next. I would love to see Wei Li and Shevchenko, don't get me wrong. Those are my two favorite women's fighters right now, but I think Silva deserves the shot after that phenomenal performance. So let's move on to the next fight. Next up, we had a featherweight bout. It was supposed to be a bantamweight bout, but Jose Aldo missed weight by, I don't know, something like 10 pounds. He wasn't even close to making the weight, which kind of changed my prediction going to this. I thought, you know, with that added weight, Aldo might get this done, because I had initially predicted Zahabi to win, but that weight, it played a factor. I thought, honestly, I thought Jose Aldo won the first 2 rounds. I thought at the end of the fight, it was going to be a Jose Aldo win, but at the end of the fight, I knew that Jose Aldo didn't win the fight, if that makes any sense, because he was laying on his back for the last 2 or 3 minutes, taking shots and not really covering up. He was gassed. He was done. If it was a real world fight, Zahabi would have killed Jose Aldo. He wouldn't have been living anymore. Like, he was done. He was absolutely done. So I'm glad that Zahabi did get the nod and did get the win and the decision there, because he won the fight. However, if we're scoring it like a UFC fight, I actually thought that Jose Aldo won. It was a very close fight. They were going back and forth. Jose Aldo seemed to have a speed advantage, but Zahabi seemed to have the timing down. Zahabi also had a slightly better game plan, it seemed, but Jose Aldo had the weight advantage, so his punches were landing harder. It was such a great fight. That was a really good, not co-main event, but like the third fight there, leading into our co-main event, which I'll talk about next. Valentina Shevchenko versus Manon Fiorot. And Fiorot coming into this saying, oh, I'm going to retire Shevchenko. Why isn't she talking about me? Didn't really put a great taste in my mouth about Fiorot. So I thought it was funny when Shevchenko's like, well, we'll see. Whoever wins stays in the game, whoever loses retires. Which is really funny. She was saying, actually, Shevchenko in the post-fight press conference, that she doesn't want Manon to retire now. She was trying to be nice. She was like, no, I don't want her to retire. I knew I was going to beat her. I think we were just talking to, like, sell the fight. But going into that fight, I was cheering, obviously, for Shevchenko. Like I said in my prediction video, she's one of my favorite fighters of all time. I have a bit of a crush on her, too, so it was exciting to watch her fight, even though the fight wasn't the most exciting. I don't think it was as great of a fight as the Silva-Grasso fight, because there was a lot of hugging from Manon's side. Surprisingly, it wasn't Shevchenko who made the fight boring at all. She was actually making the fight very entertaining and fun, especially in the kickboxing range, landing spinning combinations and spinning back fists, spinning wheel kicks. She had a phenomenal performance at the kickboxing range. But when she got into the clinch, Fiorot was just bigger and stronger. And this is what I said in my prediction video. Shevchenko usually fights bigger opponents than her. That's why I might put her as the greatest women's fighter of all time. Despite Nunes having won 2 belts, Nunes was always bigger than her opponents, with the exception of maybe Cyborg. She was always bigger. She always had more power, whereas Shevchenko, oftentimes, especially at bantamweight, was always smaller and always found ways to outclass her opponent. And she did it again here against a kickboxer who only had 1 loss in her career. And Manon put on a great fight. I mean, she's a tall girl, pretty, like, relatively. She's 5'7", and she's very strong. She's, like, widely built. And in the clinch, she was not bullying Shevchenko. It was relatively close, but she was holding her against the cage because she was stronger. And it was tricky at times to score rounds, because I'm like, well, how much credit do you give to hugging and kneeing the butt? Because out in the open, Shevchenko's doing more work with the hands, and she's cutting Fiorot up, breaking her nose. Like, she's doing more damage to her face. So I'm glad that the judges got it right and gave Valentina the nod. I had it 4 rounds to 1 for Shevchenko. The judges had it 3 rounds to 2, but I'm also probably biased, and I might have given a round to Shevchenko that maybe you could have given to Fiorot. But I thought Fiorot put on a fantastic performance. I don't see her challenging for the belt again. She's 35. She's going to have to win another fight to get back to it, and I don't really want to re-see this fight. I think it's pretty clear who the better fighter was from that performance, and I just want to see Shevchenko versus Silva next, maybe Weili after that. I think the winner of Blanchfield and Barber also should probably get a title shot, and we'll see how it all plays out. Maybe Fiorot can fight the winner of Barber versus Blanchfield, depending on who wins, because she's already beaten one of the two of them. I can't remember which one, but yeah, fantastic performance by Shevchenko. Just a beautiful display of martial arts. It could have been a more entertaining fight if Fiorot wasn't hugging against the cage the whole time. But yeah, fantastic performance for Shevchenko. She's pretty close. I think she's one fight away from matching Nunes's title defenses record. So a couple more fights. If she can defend the belt a couple more times, I think she becomes the women's GOAT. But that conversation's up to you guys in the comments. There's always that double champ thing with Nunes. So let's move on to the main event. And in the main event, we had the welterweight title bout between Jack Della Maddalena and I forget who he fought already. Who was the guy who he just beat last night? I'm just kidding, of course. It's Belal Muhammad. Thank God he's no longer champ. My God, he's so boring. So boring, so cringe on the mic, so unlikable as a human being. I am so glad he got dethroned. I'm sure a lot of you guys are too. So, yeah, Jack stepped in there. Honestly, the first 3 rounds was just a wash. Belal was not mixing in the takedowns. He, for some reason, I don't know how delusional you have to be a guy who picked up striking at 23 years old, who's never been a striker in his life, and now at 36 years old, you think that you somehow have the hands of Canelo, as put in Belal's words himself, the hands of Canelo. Not even remotely close. You just got beat up by Jack Della Maddalena, who isn't even a real boxer. Like, if Belal boxed Canelo, he would be done in under a round. Belal's striking is abysmal. It truly is. It only really works because he mixes things together well, and there's always the threat of the takedown. But his combinations are lazy. And a lot of his combinations, he's reaching with his punches, which you never want to see. He doesn't get there with his footwork. I could take literally an hour and sit and pick apart Belal's boxing and tell you why it's not good. And we could take apart Jack Della Maddalena's boxing, especially in this fight, and I could tell you guys why it's some of the best boxing in the sport. I mean, the way he was moving his head throughout this fight, the way he was dipping off to the side, cutting angles with his feet too, his pivots and his footwork were on point. Everything that I saw from Jack was phenomenal, besides a little bit of his head movement. You know, he needs to duck his head a little bit and just veer off the center line slightly when he's moving in and moving back. Slight adjustments there, and he literally is in the top 3 of boxers in the UFC at this point. He's really the only critiques that I have for Jack are that he kept his head on the center line a little bit. He got caught with a couple punches from Belal, which you're going to get caught with a couple punches in a fight. It's a fight. And he got taken down, but really his takedown defense was on point for the first 3 rounds. He only got taken down in the 4th, and I think in the 5th as well, but he got right back up. He wasn't down for long. It's not like Belal did a ton of damage or he worked hard on the ground. It was just kind of like get him down, and then Jack works his way back up to his feet. So those first 2 rounds were just a wash. You know, Belal wasn't really fighting his fight. He wasn't mixing in the takedowns very well. He was trying to trust his hands, which, like I was getting to before, Belal can't box. I don't know why he was trusting his hands, but he started to mix in some kicks, and then in the 4th and 5th round, he started to mix in some takedowns. Maybe you could give Belal rounds 4 and 5. I would maybe give him 4. 5, I don't know. You could kind of call it either way. It's hard to judge that fight, but I know for a fact that Jack Della Maddalena won it. You just look at the faces of the guys at the end of the fight, and Jack, you know, his eye was swelling up a little bit in the 5th round, but all the damage was on Belal's face. I mean, his lip was cut, his nose was cut, he's bleeding everywhere. I mean, he looked atrocious, but he kind of always looks atrocious. I always like to say that Belal Muhammad looks like a blind child put together a Mr. Potato Head, because it looks like he has 2 different eyes from 2 different people. ugly human being. But anyways, he got his face battered in the fight, and I thought that clearly showed that Jack Della Maddalena won the fight. He was landing the more consequential punches, and he just looked better. He looked cleaner. He was landing things on Belal and then pulling away. He was taunting Belal throughout the fight too. He was, shooting for his own takedowns at times. He almost tripped Belal a couple times there, and if it weren't for Belal being a very good wrestler, which I got to give him his flowers where it's due, but if it wasn't for Belal being a really good wrestler, I think Jack Della Maddalena would have thrown him on his head a couple of times there because he got really close. And I loved the performance by Jack. I thought he did a fantastic job. He did everything right. And he completely executed his game plan and got Belal almost out of there. He almost knocked him out in the 5th round, but he clearly won the fight, I think. And I don't want to see a rematch. I don't want to see Belal fight ever again, if I'm being honest. But I don't think a rematch is necessary. I think Belal needs to win another fight. He never defended his belt. It's not like he was a long reigning champion. I feel like you need to defend your belt once, maybe twice, and then you can get that immediate call for a rematch if you lose your belt. But if you won the belt and you never defended it, and you won it in a fight against Leon Edwards, who is a great fighter, but, the style matchup there wasn't perfect. Leon was kind of gearing down towards the end of his career. His last fight against Sean Brady, he looked really bad in. And I don't want to discredit that win from Belal too much, but he also did drop a round in that fight where it was almost a 10-8 round for Leon. It just wasn't the most impressive performance I've ever seen to win a belt. And then he goes around and talks like, oh, I'm right up there with GSP. And it's just stuff like that is why he has no fans. But anyways. So yeah, I would like to see Belal Muhammad relegated to the prelims, if not early prelims. Now I know that's not going to happen, but I want to see Jack and Islam now. I think that's kind of what we were waiting for. A lot of fans were watching this fight just to see what Islam's next fight would be. Would it be against Ilya, or would it be going up in weight and challenging for the 170 belt? I think he does now challenge Jack Della Maddalena for 170, hopefully in the summer. Hopefully it's coming quick. And Charles Oliveira versus Ilia Topuria for the lightweight title. That's going to be awesome. So it looks like Islam is vacating. He's not actually going to go for the double champ status. At least that's what it seems so far. I know not everything's confirmed yet, but it seems like Islam's going to vacate, then go up. We'll see if he ever comes back down and we ever get the Ilya versus Islam fight. If he vacates, I don't really see that fight happening. If he kept his 155 belt, went up, won the 170 belt, and then came back down to defend the 155 belt, that would be awesome. But when you're going 15 pounds in weight like that, like, you need to adjust to welterweight if you're going to do welterweight properly. It's not like winning a belt at 145 then going to 155. That 10-pound jump is a lot different than the 15-pound jump. It is a big difference. So we'll see what happens there. If it is Ilya versus Charles for the 155 belt, to be honest, I don't see any chance that Charles Oliveira can win that fight. On the ground, he's outmatched. I mean, people say, oh, he's such a great jiu-jitsu guy. He's got all these submissions. He's been submitted multiple times, and he's not great on the ground. Like, he's not Kron Gracie level. He's not like this elite jiu-jitsu guy who's just unpenetrable and you can't get past his guard. He can be beaten on the ground. He's been handled on the ground before, and he's also done some elite things on the ground. I'm not trying to wipe away his jiu-jitsu altogether. He is one of the most deadly submission guys in the entire sport. That's why he has the most submissions in the sport. It's also because he came into the UFC at like 12, but I really don't see him outclassing Ilya in the jiu-jitsu. I honestly think Ilia Topuria has jiu-jitsu good enough to submit Charles Oliveira, even if it was just a straight-up jiu-jitsu match. I'm dead serious about that. Then you add on the wrestling. That's going to be another problem for Charles Oliveira. So high-level wrestling and high-level jiu-jitsu, I think on the ground, Ilya clears Charles. Then we go on the feet. And then it's an even more lopsided fight, because on the feet, Charles Oliveira, he gets knocked down. He's been knocked out how many times in his career? He has a really weak chin, and I think he gets knocked out in the first round. I honestly think Ilia Topuria walks through him like butter. I think that's a much easier fight for Ilya than Volk was or Max Holloway was. I'm not one of these guys who's like super high on Charles Oliveira because he won the belt a couple years ago and he had that run, right, where he's beating these top-level 155ers. I'm somebody who's been watching Charles Oliveira since he fought in the UFC, since his debut. And I've seen this guy lose over and over and over again. And I've seen him give up in fights over and over and over again. And I have no confidence in him to win another belt or to defend it. So that's how I feel about Ilya versus Charles, but we'll get more into that breakdown when that fight's announced. When it comes to Islam versus Jack, I think that's way more one-sided, obviously. You know, Charles, we got to give him respect. He can find a submission on anybody. But Islam versus Jack, I mean, if Jack can outbox him for 5 rounds and keep it on the feet, but I don't see that happening. You know, Islam is 20 times the wrestler that Belal is. Like, he's a way better wrestler than Belal Muhammad is. It's not even remotely close. So if Islam gets on the legs of Jack, he's going to get him down and he's going to keep him down. If Belal was able to take Jack down at all, Islam's going to be able to hold him on the ground. Now, is he going to be able to submit Jack? Probably. He's been able to submit basically anybody he's put his hands on. He has one of the meanest Darce chokes, maybe the single best Darce choke I've ever seen in MMA, and that's saying a lot. So I think Islam could submit him on the feet. The kickboxing, I think, is equal. I think Islam actually might have a slight advantage when it comes to the kickboxing. It gets better and better every year. Is he on the level of Umar or Usman? Not quite, but he does have really good kicks, and he's getting better and better with each fight. We just saw him outstrike Dustin Poirier. So who knows what he's going to come and look like against Jack Della Maddalena. Now, in the boxing, yeah, it's a little bit different there. I like Poirier. I like his boxing. I like the reverse guards he uses. He does a lot of interesting stuff in there, but as a pure boxer, I think Jack Della Maddalena has the edge over Dustin Poirier, even if he doesn't have the same resume. I think if you look at the pure boxing technique of Jack Della Maddalena versus Dustin Poirier, I think you have to concede that Jack is the better boxer. So if it does stay in that boxing range and Islam does engage with the boxing, I think Islam needs to watch out because he could get tuned up in that fight a little bit. However, Jack, even though he has like 12 knockouts, Jack wasn't able to knock out Belal Muhammad, and I feel like Islam Makhachev has an even better chin. He's got even better durability. He's even better at avoiding punches because Belal, sometimes his head is just right on the center line and he gets hit with stuff and you're like, how did that not knock you out? Like, you just got hit square in the face. Whereas Islam doesn't get hit square as much. He does keep his head down a little bit. He takes things on the forehead, and he tucks his chin a little bit more than Belal does. So I don't want to break that fight down completely right now because it still has yet to be announced, but I think Islam works his way through Jack Della Maddalena in basically every single realm, with the exception of the boxing maybe, but even then, we don't know how good Islam can get in a training camp because every single time he steps into the cage, he's a new fighter, and he's even better than the last time that we saw him. So we'll see. I'm very excited for that fight. I'm sad that we're not getting Ilya versus Islam right away, as I'm sure many fans are, but hopefully that fight comes at some point in the future. Islam still has a few prime years left in him, probably 2 or 3 more prime years left. Ilya, on the other hand, has like 5 or 6 prime years left, maybe 7. We'll see how his career plays out, but there's still time to make this fight. I'm going to be so excited when it finally gets announced because I think it's the biggest fight you can possibly make in the UFC right now. I'm the biggest Jon Jones fan ever, but he's kind of nearing the end of his career, and to be completely honest with you guys, I don't see Tom Aspinall as much of a challenge for Jon Jones, but we'll see that fight when it plays out. You guys let me know down below in the comments. Play matchmaker. Let me know who you guys want to see everybody fight next. I think Shevchenko versus Silva is the obvious one. I think Jack Della Maddalena versus Islam is obvious. And I think Ilya versus Charles Oliveira. I know that doesn't really factor into the fights that we just saw yesterday, but I think that's also the next fight to make. But you guys let me know down below in the comments which fights you guys want to see next. Let me know what you guys thought about the fights last night. Who do you guys think had the best performance? What was the best knockout? I'd probably give it to Marc Andre with that KO. With the elbow. That was absolutely vicious. Let me know what you guys thought about the fights down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. As always, don't forget to like, subscribe, share with your friends to help boost this channel and the algorithm. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.